So, Jarvis, it has finally happened again. The Hawks are on a 3-game winning streak. They beat the Pacers in Indiana, beat the Raptors, which they hadn't done in about 6 or 7 years, in Toronto. And of course, they beat the Heat here at home Monday night. And really, Jarvis, if you look back, it's really 4 out of the last 5. And it could have been 5 straight because
Yeah.
they beat the Clippers in LA to wrap up their road trip 2-2, and they got that close to beating the Bucks as well. So
Yeah.
here's the thing. We always brace ourselves as the media who covers the Hawks and as the fan base who supports the Hawks on whether or not we think that they are turning the curve. So let's start there. Do you think that this is an indication that the Hawks are turning the corner? And keep this in mind, JD. Keep this in mind. Next couple of games to wrap up January.
Mm-hmm.
At Mavericks, host Knicks, host Hornets, at Bulls, at Thunder, host Clippers, at Blazers. Just keep all that in mind before you answer that question.
Okay. All right. So, and isn't it ironic that they are going out to play the Dallas Mavericks after all these reports of Trae Young potentially being traded and not about to get ready to go play the dude that he was traded for initially? But anyway, I know we're probably going to touch on that just in a little bit. But to answer your question, I think that I'm not going to get my hopes up. I'm going to be as probably as realistic as I possibly can with this team because, like I said, I said I was done with this team, and a lot of people took that literally. Like, hey, I can't be done with the team. I gotta watch the doggone team. I gotta be able to talk about them. You know what I'm saying? So I ain't gonna do y'all like that. I wouldn't do y'all like that. That would be a disservice to you all as like those Sports Atlanta family. Now I don't mess with family. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't do that to y'all. But I think that it's gonna take for me to see a little bit more of what we've been seeing. Right? Like what we've been seeing is Trae Young who's been very, very good lately shooting from behind a 3-point arc because, like he said, to start the season, he wasn't doing well. When you talking about shooting 28%, it was
Right.
probably his worst shooting year from behind the arc in his entire career. So
Indeed.
that's coming around. Even his defensive prowess is starting to come around, just being active and getting in passing lanes and all that stuff and joining the party, right? Because we know what Dejounte Murray brings to the squad defensively. And, they brought him out of the depths of the NBA as far as being one of the worst defensive teams in the NBA. So now they're kind of hovering around 15, 16, right there, right in the middle of the pack, right? That's all we asked for when we're talking about being one of the best offensive teams last year and coming into this year. So I need to see more. I think that's my answer. I need to see more because I'm not gonna jump back in on this bandwagon. I'm not gonna do it to myself because hey, this team has been up and down like the doggone stock market, more so down. And then when you have all this drama going on off the court, it just adds to that, right? It just compounds each other, right? So that's kind of where I am right now. So I'm a little excited, but I'm holding that way down in the deeps of the draws and gut of my soul, until I see more. I gotta see more.
And I tend to agree with you. We are just being cautiously optimistic because it's a small sample size. I mean, we're talking about 4 of the last 5 games. We're talking about 3 straight. And granted, these are all quality teams. So that's a good look. And even the loss you took to the Bucks, still a quality team that you almost beat. So I do respect that, but I agree with you. I think one of the biggest tests will come Wednesday when they're at the Dallas Mavericks, one of the better teams, one of the teams that's playing their A game in the league this season. It's always an issue, a challenge, drama when it comes to the Knicks. We just don't quite know.
Exactly, yeah.
And so you look at the rest of the schedule and you have a lot of games that will allow them to go on a run and really, really get back into this thing. But again, you really just don't know what the impact is going to be to all of the things that are swirling. I mean, Jarvis, it seems like we, as ATL Day Ones and as a Locked On Sports Atlanta family, hear something from our sources, a different story every day, a different take, a different angle, more information on the angles that have been shared. And then, of course, we have our other colleagues who are in the market who are sharing the same thing. And then you've got national reporters coming in. So we have said for quite some time that where there's smoke, there's fire. And it took a minute for the fire to start showing itself, but it is hot like fire, like hot down there at State Farm Arena. So yes, it's great to win 4 out of the last 5. Yes, it's great to win 3 straight, but let's just be real about this thing. At the end of the day, we're still talking about a team that essentially is 19 and 22. So there's still a ways to go, right?
Right.
And when you look at the standings, you're still talking about a team that is where are we now? And I have to look because it changes seemingly every single day. So they're still in 9th place. And
Ninth place, yeah.
correction, by the way, they have gotten back to 500. So I do want to give them their credit for that.
Yes.
But they're in 9th place right now. So you still have to ask the question of how did we get here? How do we get past this? And real talk, you got dirty laundry that's still unfolding, and stories and drama and friction that's still developing. And you got to ask yourself the question, how we get here, and can the Hawks fight their way out of it with all of this stuff still swirling?
I think that the guy that I mentioned earlier, Dejounte Murray, is if you're gonna lean on somebody, if I can pick one person that you could possibly lean on to kind of like navigate this team through this, and he probably didn't ask for this. He didn't ask to probably be a leader, but I think that we kind of deemed him the leader early on in the season when the Hawks were actually looking like a team that could potentially contend in the Eastern Conference. But now, when you're talking about dealing with all the drama, and I think Dejounte kind of put it in the best way he possibly could without saying, coming out and being really straight up and keeping it funky. He said, I'm just trying to find my way in Atlanta, like in ATL. I'm like, so I think that when you think about that, like, hey, he didn't come here expecting all this drama. This dude came from the San Antonio Spurs, where there ain't no drama off. Even if it is drama, it ain't no drama off the court. Like, it is, lips are sealed out there in San Antonio.
Indeed.
That's the one thing that you have to kind of respect about that organization. But coming into here and having to deal with this, and I think that since this Sam Amick report came out, like these guys on a 3-game winning streak. So I think that if I'm going to lean in a certain way or lean towards one player, it's going to have to be Dejounte Murray, because I think that he has the mental fortitude to kind of deal with this. I can't pin on JC because he got 7 million trade scenarios going on in his head, and he's still trying to find his way. Trae is finally starting to play well offensively. So I think that if Trae plays well, like, it's more than likely the team's going to have a chance to win, and they're more likely going to have a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter. So and his leadership skills are still questionable in my mind, or probable, if I could use the injury designation in that particular moment. So right now, I'm just going to lean towards Dejounte Murray being that guy to get these guys through this. And if he's able to do this with the teams that you just listed, as far as the upcoming schedule, the Hawks have a chance to turn this thing around as we get ready to head up against the trade deadline on February 9th.
Now, to me, you just hit the nail on the head of what gives me a little bit of pause. We know how we got here. We got here because, let's just be real, the friction between Trae Young and Nate McMillan, the inability for the backcourt of Trae Young and Dejounte Murray to really kind of figure out how they coexist together. And somebody said this yesterday, and I chuckled because I don't agree, but they said they're the same player. No, they're not. They have a lot of similarities in their offensive game, maybe, kind of, sort of, but no, they're not even close to the same player. Dejounte Murray can play both the one and the two. DJ can. So, but I still feel like it was one of those situations where, they looked like they melded initially, but maybe we called it too soon. Maybe they hadn't melded as much as we thought they had, in terms of what do you do when the chips are down? Who then takes over and who takes the lead in the locker room and on the court? So I think that is still a work in progress that is finally maybe starting to flesh itself out, because maybe they're having some real conversations like, man, look, I came here for XYZ. I'm just here to do XYZ. How can we make this better? I'm waiting for that revelation to come out, that's a part of maybe how this win streak started to play itself out. I think the other piece is this. A couple of things have to happen. JC did, according to a recent report, he's approved to request a trade.
Yeah.
So I think that piece is another layer that had not been reported in previous trade conversations. So I think we're actually closer than we think we are to a trade there. What I would like to see them do, should they get rid of JC or let him move on, is bring in a veteran who can also stabilize the team. Because as much as it's great that DJ and Trae are finally melding and figuring it out, they're still the missing piece. And I'm going to keep saying this until it's addressed. You got no Vince Carter, you got no Lou Williams, and they were the stabilizing forces in that locker room that even when the Hawks swooned last season, Lou was a part of helping them on the court and off the court to get it back right. I still think they're missing that person. Right. So I feel like you need to get that person either in two spaces. Either if you let JC move on, or if you go out and get yourself a sniper to help out with some of their three-point woes. They're getting better, but they still may need one other sniper. And I think that's going to be important. Also, Jarvis, how maybe a Kyle Korver or somebody can address the unrest that is going on in that front office. Because the more you hear about it, maybe it doesn't seem like it affects the players, and maybe it doesn't. But essentially where it'll affect you is if you don't make the right move at the trade deadline. Is if you don't make the right move in the draft, if you don't make the right moves in free agency. So you may have to think about it as long, bigger picture. But I still think, Jarvis, with some of those issues there, that's a question. Now, let me ask you this before we wrap up our Hawks talk. Speaking of that, now you have Kyle Korver, who's officially been announced as the assistant GM. Half the world is okay with it. Half the world is not. My question is this. What are your thoughts on how Kyle Korver can do two things, if you believe he can? Number one, balance out things in a very seemingly unsettled front office, but also help to balance things out within that locker room.
Wow. That's a good question. And to be honest with you, the former, as far as the front office, I don't think he can. I just don't. I don't think he can, because I don't think he has enough cachet. I don't think he has, the necessary resume that takes when you're talking about conversations and pounding the table for certain players, or hey, I'm trying to see if we can tap. I'm picking up the phone trying to call this person. I don't think that's going to happen. Right. I think Landry Fields kind of has that cachet, and let's keep it funky. Let's keep it a buck. Nick Wrestler does too. You know what I mean? Like, so what's Kyle Korver's relationship with Nick Wrestler? We haven't heard anything about that, because we know that Sam Amick reported that a lot of executives around the league wholeheartedly believe that this dude is making the big boy decision. Nick Wrestler, that is. So when you have those reports being out there, I don't think an assistant general manager who is getting his first stab at being in that front office, I don't think he's not pulling any weight like that. I don't believe it. So, but I think, however, I do think that he can help in that locker room piece, because he's been in that locker room, and those guys understand that he's been in that locker room, and they know what type of guy he is. So from that standpoint, from that piece, I feel like that's where he's going to earn his money. So he's going to earn his check, being in the locker room, making sure he's establishing rapport with all the guys in the locker room, having conversations, backdoor conversations about how they feel about the locker room. Who do they feel? Who do they like? Who they don't like? Hey, let's have a meeting. Like, let's go ahead and hash this bad boy out, because we need to do whatever we need to do to start getting some dubs. Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Or everybody gonna be up out of here, except for the rest, of course. They ain't gonna fire us. There we go.
Indeed. And I think I tend to agree. Kyle Korver could be a stabilizing force, because at least he's somebody who's thoughtful, right? He's a very cerebral former player. And he may not have all of the experience on his resume per se, as far as front office dealings, but I do think that he may be a stabilizing force of some sort. But I also agree with you. The bottom line is that in order for the Hawks organization to be seen in a respectful manner, for players to be like, oh, wow, they have everything together in the front office, which means they probably going to have it together on the sidelines and on the basketball court, is Landry Fields has to assert his authority as the GM. He basically has to say, I'm the GM. I'm where the final decision rests. Yes, we can be a collaborative team here, Kyle, Nick. But that's it. The other piece there is this. I think that at the end of the day, Kyle Korver is probably in that front office because he can be a liaison. So he can tell you what's really going on in that locker room,
perfect
and
word.
you can make decisions accordingly. So I like that hire for those two reasons alone, but we shall see, because, hey, the Hawks are going to get their first test after this streak and going back into a positive space when they take on the Mavericks tomorrow night. And if you want to hear all about it, you know where to go. Check on Locked On Sports today, because they've got all the reaction, not just to what's going on in the NBA with the Hawks, but also the cray-cray NFL postseason. It has been so crazily exciting, and I know they have thoughts on what we saw in Tampa last night. So don't forget to check them out after you check out ATL Day Ones. You can check them out on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you download your podcasts. And hey, you know, we're about to take you into For the Culture, right? They've got their own version. It's called Take of the Day. So again, don't forget to check out Locked On Sports today.